problem we thought we were beginning to overcome. You didn't hear so much of it, and then you get the Chelsea business the other week, and this last night, which actually stopped the match for 24 minutes. And of course there were terrible scenes afterwards as well.
Yes, do you think they were right under the circumstances to carry on?
Difficult to say, really, having not been there, but see, you've got a problem because it's not the football club really at fault. I mean, you open the gates to people, and these, well, hooligans is too soft a term for them, come in and start causing trouble. It's very difficult, but what do? You're in a situation where you can't really win.
We should be investigating it certainly further during the morning.
Last night, including 31 policemen during soccer violence at Luton, during and after the FA Cup tie between Luton and Millwall. 31 people were arrested as the fans ran riot through the town, causing severe damage both to the ground and property in the area. It's estimated some 10,000 Millwall fans made the trip from London. Terry Dix, Tory MP for Hayes and Hillingdon, condemned the violence and called for the culprits to be birched. At Broad Oak Heath...
Fighting fans, how football violence is queering the pitch.
Luton's match with Millwall. The damage is put at thousands of pounds. Vice President Bush says he...
A rampage by football hooligans caused damage put at thousands of pounds in Luton last night. The home team's match against visiting Millwall brought the worst violence of the season. 31 policemen and 10 other people were hurt. There was trouble during the match and play was held up for 25 minutes. But the worst scenes came at the end. Ian Findlay reports.
Before they arrived. 300 of them launched one of the most savage attacks on police ever seen at a British football ground. The police eventually regrouped and countercharged with truncheons, but by the time they regained control, 15 policemen and 10 other people needed hospital treatment. Running battles continued outside the ground. Cars and houses were damaged, and local people told of a terrifying charge by 300 fans. Coming only 8 days after the riot at Chelsea, last night's violence quickly led to calls for much tougher action to curb soccer hooliganism. Even before the Millwall fans got home to London, one MP had called for the return of birching, and Luton had decided that next time they play Millwall, it'll be a ticket-only match.
But it was shocking scenes like this that caused chaos and injury. At one stage, the game was held up for 25 minutes as police battled to control the hooligans among the 10,000 Millwall fans, if that's the right word for them, who'd travelled to the game. Police later admitted that they'd not expected so many Millwall fans at the game. And this violence comes just a week after similar scenes at Chelsea. It raises once again the issue of how soccer hooliganism can be contained. Well, one man who's had to address himself to that problem in the past is the former Minister of Sport, Dennis Hull, who's going to be joining us in a moment or two in Birmingham. But in fact, if I may continue with the conversation I was having a wee bit earlier on with David, quite simply, David, why is this beginning again? Because it was quiet for a while.
Yes, the early 70s were very bad for this sort of thing, but then there has been a sort of a better period for it. I don't know, really. I think clubs like Chelsea and Millwall get a reputation, and the fans, whether they lead boring lives or not, I don't know. And I say fans, a very small minority of those fans, because not everyone that follows Millwall or Chelsea is a hooligan, far, far from it. They get this reputation and they try to live up to it, because I think it makes them feel good.
So they themselves are actually getting themselves a league table, as it were, of violence. Yeah,
I mean, they enjoy, they see the names in the papers, Millwall fans cause this sort of trouble, and they see themselves on the television throwing seats at people, and it makes them feel big in their perverse little minds.
Now, just how involved do the players feel? Obviously, it's a very depressing thing for the players, but at the same time, is there anything they can do, any action they can take?
Well, no, not really. I wouldn't think so. See, the problem is we set in a little trailer at the top of this half hour, soccer hooligans clear the pitch. What worries me is they're clearing the terraces, because I would let my son go on his own to see a football match, and yet you could go to 50 matches, 50 Football League matches, and never see any trouble. And then, in the public mind, naturally, having seen awful violence like that, they think every football match is like that, and it's not true.
What was it like when you were playing football? You were
What were you? No, you weren't a goalkeeper. Were you
Goalkeeper,
goalkeeper?
yes. I was involved in a little bit of that. I had lumps of concrete thrown at me and things like that, but very, very rarely. You know, this is a very rare occurrence, but understandably, it gets very big coverage because what we've just seen there is unbelievable, isn't it? I mean, it's diabolical what happened last night.
Is there a date that you can put it all on? The kind of scenes we've been seeing on television? The time when it began?
It began to come in the late 60s, really, and Manchester United had a terrible reputation in the early 70s. A reputation now gone, actually. I mean, their fans are very, very good. And now it's Millwall, Chelsea and people like that. But it's a problem. I mean, people have been trying to solve it now for 10 years and more. And how do you do it? Because the innocent party, most of the time anyway, is the football club. You know?
Yes, and they're the one they're probably going to have to carry the burden of taking any further action with
Millwall Football Club and Chelsea Football Club do not want those people watching their matches. But unless you have identity cards and things like this, how do you stop them? It's a circle we keep going round and we'll never get out of the way.
Well, let me put that in fact to Dennis Howell, who I think is with us now in Birmingham. Good morning, Mr. Howell.
Morning.
Now, let's actually look at that. What sort of precautions can we take against this happening in the future?
Well, I think you've got to go back to the precautions which David Icke was talking about a short time ago, which I did when I was the minister in the mid-70s. I put myself as chairman of a committee which used to meet every 6 weeks at the most. We used to plan ahead. We took precautions in the case of Manchester United and Chelsea, as you've just heard. We made their matches all ticket, no tickets to be sold on the day of the match. We issued guidelines which seem to have been scattered to the four winds now. Nobody was to be allowed on the pitch on any circumstances. There was to be no drink on travel, no coaches arriving earlier than 1 hour before the match. One of the things that I think is happening now is a total abdication by the government of its responsibilities.
So what do you think they ought to be doing about it?
Well, first of all, they ought to be constantly active. We've not heard a word from the Home Secretary, nor from the Minister for Sport, over the 3 incidents we've had in the last 10 days. Indeed, the Minister said he was referring the matter to a committee of civil servants, which made some ludicrous recommendations at the beginning of this season. You've got to be seen to be putting down this absolutely outrageous behaviour. It's got to be stamped out.
Nevertheless, if you actually try and stamp it out in force, if you actually put police in force and things like that, you could actually contribute to it further, couldn't you?
I don't think so. This is a law and order government, and if you contrast the way that the Home Secretary and the government dealt with what they thought was violence on the picket line in the last 12 months, when they showed an absolute determination to get rid of it, with what they're doing here, and this is much worse, much, much worse. These people trample around stations, trample around neighbourhoods near grounds. It's in every way...
But of course that was one of the problems, wasn't it, that a lot of the action was away from the ground, a lot of the trouble was away from the ground.
Well, of course it's going to be away from the ground, but as I say, if there was a determination to eradicate it, and that's what we've got to have, society cannot allow this violence to go on, and it's continuing to grow. Now, I think the Football Association, too, have got to be very tough indeed. It's hard luck on some of these clubs who've done their best, as I know.
But they're being punished for the violence of people they probably wouldn't call fans.
Well, that is quite right, but you see, we have a different standard here than that which operates in UEFA. When, for example, I'm speaking from Birmingham, Aston Villa a year or two ago, and I was involved in this, was held to be responsible to soldiers, nothing to do with the Villa, who were at the Army of the Rhine having a day off, furlough, went to the Villa match and got on the pitch. Aston Villa were then made to hold the match behind closed doors.
So there'll always be the minority, therefore, that will actually cause problems for the game. Now, looking to the future, obviously we're thinking of having the Nations Cup, or we're hoping in '88 to get that over here. How do you think, briefly, that the continent will view us after this?
Well, I should think they take a very harsh view indeed, because as I was saying, over there they hold the club responsible, whether it is the club's responsibility for their supporters or not. That's tough, but it works. And incidentally, when in the 70s we took action along these lines so far as Manchester United and Chelsea were concerned, as you've said already this morning, it actually worked. And by the time I went out of office in '79, I was able to remove that ban because we'd got it under control, and Manchester United have been in very little trouble since then.
Well, Dennis Howell, thank you very much, and obviously a depressing morning for all true soccer fans.
Very depressing indeed.
Thank you for joining us this morning.
Was a match totally overshadowed by the crowd violence before, during and after the game. With only 40 minutes gone, the referee David Hutchinson was forced to lead the players to the dressing room as the crowd spilled onto the pitch. Play resumed 24 minutes later.
Harford beaten by Smith. Onto Lukowski. And it's Steen. Early shot. Brilliant. Absolutely splendid goal by Brian Steen.
Luton won 1-0, but once again the violence returned after the match, and more than 40 people, 30 of them policemen, were injured.
Supporters.
Oh, never mind. We come out a bit earlier. That you've probably gathered that. But let me tell you, the Luton manager David Pleat urged the government to take action over the hooligans. He said judges and magistrates can only do so much. The government has got to give them more licence to deal with these people.